All right, me and my low blood pressure. Well, I've got the house to myself with me and my army of ducks, thanks to that comedian guy. Let's get a little bit more maybe introspective and try and figure some of this stuff out, or at least talk some theories about low blood pressure, because that's something I've had since forever. It might go along with being underweight for a lot of my life. And I mean, doctors and society in general will tell you that having low blood pressure is healthy, and it's better to have low blood pressure than it is to have high blood pressure. But in the same way that it's generally accepted that being on the skinny side is preferable to being on the chubby side in terms of health, there is a point where you can go so low that it becomes a problem. And today and yesterday I've been struggling with my blood pressure a little bit, and so that's why it's on my mind. And let's talk about it. So, low blood pressure. So the reason I'm looking at it is yesterday I woke up really dizzy. Like dizzy, I wake up dizzy every now and then because I have low blood pressure, it fluctuates, whatever. But yesterday I was like dizzy enough that I actually felt off balance, and I felt like I had a constant tilt this way, and I was just like, this is not right. So my dad has a blood pressure machine, and I measured it, and my diastolic blood pressure was below 60. And at this point, I realized I should probably explain a little bit about the numbers when you're looking at blood pressure, just in case you don't know how it's measured. Now, take it with a grain of salt, because I'm not a doctor and I'm not an expert in this kind of stuff. But when you take your blood pressure, you put a thing on your arm and it inflates, and then the machine does some beeping and whatever, and it gives you two numbers. It gives you a top number and a bottom number. And the top one's called the systolic blood pressure, the bottom one's called diastolic blood pressure. We'll just say the top and the bottom number for simplicity. So the top number, that is the blood pressure going through your bloodstream and all that when your heart is actually doing a beat. And then the bottom number is what the blood pressure is when it's between beats, and so that's why you got two numbers. I'm not sure if there's a particular significance one way or the other, but generally healthy is sort of accepted as 120 over about 80. I mean, depends who you're asking, but that's sort of a rough guide. As far as low blood pressure goes, if you start getting a reading that is below 90 over 60, that's when you start being classified as having hypotension, which is low blood pressure. And depending on different factors, there can be issues with that. The obvious one for me being dizziness, but I've also yesterday and a bit today I've had some fatigue, and poor concentration. It's like I got nothing done yesterday. Yesterday was just a bit of a mess, just trying to get through it. Today, still feeling pretty off, but so yesterday, my bottom number was too low, below that 60 threshold, and then this morning I did 3 measurements just to check the accuracy, and 2 out of those 3 measurements showed my top number as being below 90, although the bottom number had recovered. So on the upside, I'm not having both numbers below what they should be, but if you have one number below that 90 over 60, it's technically hypotension as I understand it, and I mean, some of it, if you measure your blood pressure a lot and you notice it go down significantly from what you usually are, that can also count as hypotension. And I don't check that much, but usually I'm low, but not as low as 90 over 60. But I feel like I'm sort of just edging into that area where it's a problem. And one of the interesting things that I came across, and probably the main reason for making this little ramble, is there's apparently a bit of a link between low blood pressure and depression, which is interesting because I have both long-term low blood pressure and I have a long history of depression, and it just makes me wonder. Because, low blood pressure is supposed to be healthy, right? But I also wonder whether or not having that constantly is like a risk factor for me having more depression. It's hard to say because I think the research is fairly recent. Like, I wasn't paying attention to all the dates, but one of the articles looking at this is from 2017. I don't remember which journal it was from. I was just sort of going through stuff while I'm in that sort of low blood pressure days. So there is some emerging evidence that low blood pressure maybe doesn't cause depression, but has some kind of link. So there's something in there. I think most of the studies at this point have been done in older people. Like there were a few that were for people aged over 85. And one of the theories for that is because, I mean, as you get older, things happen. But when they're treating older people for high blood pressure, they may accidentally be overdoing it so that the older people end up with lower blood pressure than they should have. And that's an increased risk for things like depression and death. But, you know, old people have a high risk of death anyway. But yeah, they've also sort of slowly started looking at younger people and wondering, have we been overdoing? Hi, B, shush! Oh my God. They are sort of wondering, have we been overdoing the whole, you know, yes, we should fight against high blood pressure because that puts you at risk of so many other diseases, but have we ignored the problems with low blood pressure? I mean, there's some obvious ones if it gets really, really low, and that can be caused by things like internal bleeding. But I don't have internal bleeding, at least as far as I know. I'm just someone who gets low blood pressure a lot, and so that's what's been on my mind, because yesterday I did notice myself having some of those sort of depression-like thoughts, and I didn't think much of it at the time. I was like, oh, it's probably just because I'm tired or something, because I do get more of that when I'm tired. But then looking up the low blood pressure later and sort of, you know, what can I do about it, because it is frustrating and gets in the way of me doing life stuff. That's when I came across the depression link, and yeah, got a little bit into looking at that, and yeah, I was sort of like, wait a minute, I did have those thoughts today. And I think it involves a lot of social stuff, actually, which a lot of the time I don't care about social things, but, you know, maybe that's a sign that my brain's doing something weird. I don't know. I think it's relatively new research, so it's really hard to tell if, like, that's something that affects me. But, yeah. And then today, I was just sort of on the couch feeling very low energy and just thinking stuff, and then I was starting to actually just feel sad for no particular reason, and I thought, oh, maybe it's because my blood pressure's still low. Maybe there's something going on here, because what do I have to be sad about? I don't know. I guess like I'm a bit bored with life at the moment. I mean, I've got so many ideas of things to do, but today and yesterday I just feel like I can't really do anything, and maybe that's part of it. Like, you know, I do have these things I want to do, but because I'm so tired, I feel like that doesn't exist, if that makes any sense. Like, it's screwing with the way that I think, maybe. There have been some things on social media. There was one person on my newsfeed who they were asking for help to do a creative thing, and all these people are like wanting to contribute, and I was just like, wow, they just know heaps of people and all that kind of stuff, and it's sort of like people's social circles, and yeah. And then the other person is a similar social thing, but they actually went missing, and there were a whole bunch of people, you know, concerned and writing messages about them, and just trying to find this person, hoping that they're okay. They are okay as far as I know. But yeah, it's mainly like my brain sort of looking at the social stuff. And I'm not sure if like maybe that's also made me feel a bit down in some way. It's hard to know, because I don't usually care about that kind of thing. But if I'm tired and a bit more vulnerable, has that contributed to me going like, all this social stuff? But another thing is, with my depression side of things, like one of the things I was trying to do to, like, I guess keep me more grounded in the world instead of just floating, was to try and be more social. And then of course, you know, the pandemic happened, and so I haven't been as social as I was trying to be, and I've gone back into this pattern of being a hermit basically. And like, it's not bad because I like having my own space, but I think the problem with that, and maybe why I'm looking at all this social stuff, is that because I'm so disconnected from the world, when things happen, it's just like, it's hard to care about stuff. And it's also just weird living like this, in the sense that, how do I explain, like, nothing really matters. I'm just doing the same thing all the time. There's no point to anything. Like, I think as social creatures, if you're not around people, you kind of become disconnected from the world, and then it's like, it's easier to fall into that existential thing, maybe. I don't know. We've sort of gone off topic from the low blood pressure thing, but it's, I'm just wondering how much is low blood pressure triggering a vulnerability perhaps, and how much is like just my brain thinking about what I should be doing and how I should be connecting with the world, and you know, how I should try to socialize. But my strategy to socialize was to find a band, because like I like music, and being in a band, you're doing music, but you just happen to be doing it with other people, and you happen to be in a situation where you're forced to be social. And that was like, you know, two birds, one stone. But I'm sort of thinking a band isn't going to happen for me, because it's just hard to find the right people to work with. And so I guess accepting that, it's like, well, I need a new strategy to be social, don't I? And I can't think of one. And so, yeah, there's all these sort of things that are adding up. And maybe something with the low blood pressure has just made me think more in that sense. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. You guys know how I ramble. A lot of thoughts around that kind of stuff, and I don't really have a point to make in the end. It's just worth thinking about. And another thing, just I guess to maybe end on, I could ramble for another 30 minutes, who knows. But my bloody hay fever has been really annoying the past little while, and I can't find any kind of antihistamine that I can take safely and that doesn't make me drowsy or set off depression. So I'm just at a loss for what to do with my hay fever. But one thing is so I've been trying Kids Dimetapp every now and then, which still makes me drowsy, but it's easy to control the dose because it's in liquid form, so I can have half a dose and try that, although I haven't been fully scientific about it, so I don't really know what works yet. But one of the components in that can raise your blood pressure, and so I'm thinking, well, if I can find a dose that works to solve my hay fever without making me too drowsy, maybe a nice side effect would be if it pops up my blood pressure just a little bit so that I don't feel like I've been feeling the last 2 days. But I don't know, that might be wishful thinking. And I don't know if like the time of day affects whether or not I'll get drowsy, and I don't know if like the dosage, you know, how much do you need of a dose to get each effect, like, and how long do they last? So like the blood pressure effect, it might last like an hour, or it might last a day. I don't know how any of this stuff works, so that's a little bit frustrating. As for what to do about my low blood pressure, you know, like if it is affecting my mood, then low blood pressure is something that maybe I should try to avoid and try and get into that more normal range more frequently. I'll talk to my doctor a bit more in depth next time I see her, because usually when we have this conversation, it's just like, no, it's normal, it's better to be low than high. But knowing that there's a connection with depression now, it does make me a little bit concerned, and so maybe I do need to do something about the low blood pressure. And as far as I know, I mean, it depends a little bit what the problem is, because there are medications and things that can lower your blood pressure. There are injuries and stuff. I don't have those things. In the more normal stuff to do is like drink more fluids, more water basically, and I think have a little bit more salt in the diet. Salt, though, is a bit risky because, like, it's hard to know when you've got enough and when you're getting into unhealthy levels. And there was one thing that suggested that too much salt can lower your blood pressure anyway. So, like, what's the balance? I've mainly just been trying with more water. Yesterday, I also tried to eat more things. So, I had some pistachio nuts because they're a little bit salty. And also, back when I was underweight, like properly underweight instead of just the low end of normal, I did see a dietitian who was saying like pistachio nuts, maybe it was for protein, I don't even remember, but that was something that I could have. So I was like, okay, we've got some, I'll eat that. And then the other thing I tried is after dinner, I had some dessert, which I usually don't. And so a bit of ice cream with some Milo. I think my brother was saying it's got a bit of iron in it, and so I'm like, well, maybe that's a little bit of extra iron, because feeling dizzy could also be low iron. Like, there's more than one thing that it could be. The only thing that I have confirmation on is the low blood pressure, because we actually have a machine for that. I can't just do a blood test to check my iron levels. But yeah, I was just like, well, just in case. But the other thing is, because I've realized I have a bit of a lactose, not intolerance, but like sensitivity, I've sort of not been drinking milk, and I probably should because I'm a female, and like especially as you get older, you're at risk of osteoporosis type things. But yeah, I was like kind of avoiding milk a little bit because I don't want to feel like I'm going to throw up and all that. But I have noticed if I have a small amount of ice cream, that doesn't affect me. So that's below my tolerance level. And so that's what I did. And towards the end of yesterday, my bottom number did recover, and so I was in that healthy range. But this morning, it was the top number that was the problem, and I don't know how to fix that. It might just be like random chance, and you know, it's just a little home blood pressure unit, so there's always possibility of inaccuracies. If I'm really feeling bad the next few days, I'll just go see my doctor because, you know, that's the most sensible thing to do. But I can't just be dropping in all the time and trying to figure things out for myself. And then because medical research is always changing and I've got some weird ass problems, you know, trying to figure out stuff for myself and like, what can I tell my doctor that I think might be a problem, because we just can't figure out me a lot of the time. You know, with the biological depression I have and not being able to have antidepressants, it just makes this stuff tricky. Yeah, so is that everything? I think exercise is supposed to help get you to a more normal blood pressure. Being tired, that's difficult. And I also have been finding, I don't know if it's more humid or something in Sydney at the moment, but just like when I do, like I try and take Hope for a walk every day. And I always come home and I just feel so like I'm struggling with the feeling of being sweaty, and that puts me off. That doesn't help with the whole exercise thing. I really should do more exercise, but yeah, I don't know if like heat also might be having an impact on blood pressure. Like there's just so many factors with these things. So yeah, but that's my ramble. So I've got low blood pressure. I'm wondering if it might actually be a problem for me to chronically have low blood pressure. If your blood pressure is too low for extended periods of time, it can damage your heart. And so that's not exactly fun to think about. I don't think I'm that low, hopefully, but I'm just wondering if constantly being on that low end might be causing some problems for me that we just never would have thought of. Because our society does currently focus more on high blood pressure as a problem rather than low blood pressure. And the possible association with depression is interesting given that I'm prone to both. So those are some thoughts and some introspective rambling about me and my health. And I hope you're enjoying the ducks and the picture quality and the sound quality. I'm hoping are noticeably better than my old phone now that I've got the S21 Ultra instead of my old S7 Edge, which the picture was fine, but the sound was, getting a lot worse after I repaired it. But yeah, no, I think like just from me looking here, I think the picture quality looks pretty good, but the screen on the phone also has its own sort of color profile. So when I put it on my computer, it will look slightly different. And so, yeah, but I hope it's looking good. And I think I'm just going to be too tired to make any more videos before the next live stream. So if you're wanting to jump on that live stream, that's every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Sydney time, currently Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And I'll see you guys then.